Well, happy Sunshine Week. Here at ALEC, we are celebrating Sunshine Week. That means we're focused on model policies and ideas that increase and expand government transparency. This is a topic that ALEC has been focused on for decades. One of the big highlights over the last year, we launched our ALEC Government Efficiency Coalition that meets monthly. And so I'm really excited to chat with some of our task force directors today about key model policies on government transparency. And what I'd like to do is start with you, Alan. So talk to me a little bit about the ALEC Act to establish an Office of Regulatory Management.
Absolutely. The Act to establish an Office of Regulatory Management is a relatively simple idea. It just creates an office where the governor will appoint a director to help operate the office. And it really just aims at improving exactly what you're talking about, both accountability and transparency, but also efficiency within the regulatory process. So some of the main objectives of this office will be to set a target and reach a regulatory reduction. So removing, whether that just be duplicative or outdated regulations from the books. So it sets a goal and aims to meet that goal, and will also just improve overall efficiency and the permitting turnaround time, similarly through review of kind of existing regulations. And then also just increase overall accountability through cost-benefit analysis of new regulations.
And this was something that's based on what Governor Glenn Youngkin did in Virginia.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2022, Governor Glenn Youngkin signed an executive order creating this office. And it was a relatively small office in terms of kind of the operations. I mean, they only had 3 employees, and they went through all of the regulations on the books. And when they set out, they wanted to reduce the regulatory burden by 25%. However, at the end of 2025, they had actually exceeded that goal and had a 35% reduction in the regulatory requirements. There are also, through their work, they estimated that the time to get an occupational license in Virginia dropped from 33 days to just 5 days. You can also, all of the guidance documents are publicly available, so anyone could go look through them. You can see where your requests are in the process. So picture it like you're tracking a package. You can see exactly where it is in the stage and have a better idea of when you kind of get that answer. And then also just had some incredible benefits across just life in Virginia. I mean, through some of their updates to the building code, they estimate that it dropped the cost of a new house by $24,000.
Yeah, that was amazing. And I think to your point about improving the lives of, all Virginians, it's cool that with that extra level of transparency, you're able to track, okay, where is my application for getting my professional license? I can get to work much faster. And then we actually just had the opportunity to testify in Maryland. So it's exciting to see that other states took note of Governor Glenn Youngkin's success. And in Maryland, it was Delegate Tom Hutchinson who introduced his own ORM legislation.
Yeah, and I mean, it was hard to ignore. I mean, in total, they estimate that the office saved Virginians $1.2 billion a year. So from a neighboring state's perspective, that's hard to ignore.
Yeah, phenomenal. And this is in the ALEC Essential Policy Solutions for 2026. Awesome. Okay. Brooklyn, let's move on to you. We're going to talk healthcare. The first policy I wanted to chat through was hospital price transparency. We've got an ALEC model, and a number of states have followed. Tell us what's going on with that.
So, healthcare is the only area of our economy where we actually expect patients to pay for their healthcare without knowing what it costs. Our Hospital Price Transparency Act just requires hospitals and other providers to post their prices for everyone to see. That way, people can better budget for what their healthcare costs are going to be. And that also inspires competition, which we all know lowers prices. So we track with the federal healthcare price transparency laws, and it also provides for some enforcement mechanisms when providers are not compliant with those laws. And we also protect consumers by preventing hospitals from entering into debt collection processes when they're not compliant with those.
And we've given out some ALEC Policy Champion Awards to state legislators who have successfully gotten this across the finish line. Jessica De La Cruz in Rhode Island comes to mind from a couple of years back. What states would you say, or is there a state that is sort of the gold standard currently?
Oklahoma most recently has become the gold standard because it has all the elements that are important with hospital price transparency. It requires the prices to be posted, allows for enforcement, and then it protects consumers by protecting against debt collection when hospitals are not compliant.
Fantastic. And that's another one of our essential policy solutions for 2026. So, two-part special with Brooklyn. So the next one I wanted to ask you about was on 340B and the transparency model that ALEC has for that. Could you talk about the 340B model?
Yeah, so just to let people know what 340B is, 340B is a federal program that allows hospitals and other covered entities that serve large portions of uninsured and low income patients to purchase drugs at a steeply discounted price. So, this is a really popular program. It's exploded in the last few years, and our Transparency and Accountability Act just basically requires hospitals and other covered entities to report to the legislature how much money they're making off the 340B program and let them know where that money is going and what it's used for.
Fantastic. And what's the state of play right now at the across the states on this model?
Indiana was the first to pass our model. Minnesota also has a really good Transparency and Accountability Act that requires yearly reports to come out. But we've got like 5 states that are considering our model right now.
Fantastic. All right. Josh, we're going to talk a little bit about property taxes and how transparency is key to perhaps solving the issue of what is, I think, the most hated tax across the country. So tell us a little bit about the history of the Truth in Taxation Act and how perhaps it can help solve this issue.
Yeah, I'll back up a little bit since you mentioned property taxes being such a hated tax. The property tax in most of the country is calculated based on a tax rate and the value of the property being taxed. So your tax bill can change without the tax rate ever actually changing. This is why so many Americans in recent years have felt the pain of higher property taxes. Truth in Taxation attempts to get a hold of this issue by requiring more transparency from local governments throughout the property tax process. It sets what we call a revenue neutral rate so that if your local taxing entity is going to collect more revenue than they have in the previous year, not change their tax rates, this revenue neutral rate is based on tax revenue. So if property tax bills are going to go up, the local taxing authority must hold a meeting and take publicly recorded votes. This means that residents have the opportunity to understand when their property tax bills are going up, what that money is going towards.
So if you're going to get a bill in the mail where you're paying $1 more than you did last year on your property taxes for your home, that could potentially trigger this process. And basically, that's that level of transparency that we're talking about, because then it forces your local elected leaders to have some sunlight on them and take a publicly recorded vote. And so naturally, I think what we're getting at is that the natural effect of that transparency could help keep property tax those bills in check. And that's been the experience of Utah.
Yes, this ALEC model policy comes from a few states, but Utah has really been the pioneer in truth in taxation, having first implemented the policy in the 1980s. What we've seen over 18 editions of Rich States, Poor States is that the state of Utah has been the most competitive, economically competitive state in the country. They've brought in a whole bunch of migration, attracted a whole bunch of businesses and workers moving into Utah from other states. That has increased property values in the state, but truth in taxation has helped over time to keep Utah competitive in the property tax arena.
That's right. So a lot of folks come to us and they're looking for solutions on property taxes. I would say, one thing we often recommend is, start with truth in taxation. If you don't have something like that on the books, take a closer look at it. And what states besides Utah jump out in your mind?
Lee, Kansas has led the way a few years ago, implementing a model policy very similar to the ALEC Truth in Taxation Act. It's had a very similar effect to the truth in taxation policy in Utah. It's kept property taxes low. In fact, in recent years, most counties in Kansas have not raised property taxes faster than that revenue neutral rate would allow.
Excellent. And of course, if you read ALEC's Essential Policy Solutions for 2026 and some of the previous years, you'll see this policy featured there. So before we wrap up, guys, I just wanted to see if you had any closing thoughts. Alan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, though the current Virginia administration has taken the Office of Regulatory Management website off of the books, and you got to go dig to find the information, the accomplishments still live on in Virginia, and has really promoted that kind of increased transparency, accountability, and efficiency within the government. So states looking to kind of bring those practices into their borders should look to the act to establish an Office of Regulatory Management.
All right, Brooklyn.
People are really struggling to pay for healthcare in this country. There's a new Gallup poll that shows that people are really not paying for basic human needs in order to afford their healthcare. So our transparency models just basically try to encourage to shine more light on healthcare costs and help people better plan for what their healthcare costs are going to be and encourage competition, which can bring costs down.
Excellent. And Josh.
There are two sides to every fiscal coin, taxes and spending. And when residents, homeowners, property owners around the country are seeing their property taxes go up, that means on the other side of the fiscal coin, government spending is increasing. Truth in taxation helps ensure that taxpayers are kept in the loop about spending increases and increases in their own tax bills.
Well said. Well, that's the end of our Sunshine Week conversation. And of course, this is just a small sampling of the ALEC model policies focused on increasing transparency. You can find our entire model policy library at alec.org. So I hope you'll go check that out. Thank you for listening.